So they can't lose. They will do anything to win. So how do they do that? They're not going to do COVID again. I know everyone on the right's afraid they're going to do COVID and mask mandate. They're not going to do that. They can't do that. If they've already been exposed, that won't work. There's going to be no. What are they going to do? They're going to go to war with Russia. Is what they're going to do. There will be a hot war between the United States and Russia in the next year. And
really?
Yes, of course. They want it anyway.
Welcome, family, to another edition of Stranger Thinking Media. This is Yeshayahu, where we bring you the gospel of Yahusha HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, to address the problems of a modern world. And today's topic, Gog or Agag. Numbers chapter 24, verse 7. He shall pour the water out of his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters, and his king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brought him forth out of Egypt. He hath as it were the strength of a unicorn. He shall eat up the nations, his enemies, and shall break their bones, and pierce them through with his arrows. He couched, he lay down as a lion, and as a great lion, who shall stir him up. Blessed is he that blesses thee, and cursed is he that curseth thee. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And again, to come on top of that, Daniel chapter 10. Then said he unto me, Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. So that's interesting. We need to take a hard look at that. So I'm going to go back here for a second. Let's slip back. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood. So the Apostle Paul is trying to let us know that the true enemy is not the guy on the street. It's not I guarantee if you're getting robbed or something, you're thinking this guy is evil. He's my enemy. Well, he's a vessel of your enemy. He's being used. See, he left his door open, front door, back door, windows, and something entered into him, something spiritual, something wicked, and used him as a tool. And so what Paul is trying to get you to understand is your war is not with other humans. It's with what's affecting or infecting that human. And so when we skip back over to Daniel chapter 10, when Paul talks about principalities, let's see what he's talking about. He says that the prince of Persia withstood the messenger angel, but lo, Michael, one of the chief princes. So this term prince is being applied to an archangel. And conversely, the prince of Persia is either an archangel, or excuse me, I should say angel, or a demonic force. And so let's quickly understand the difference. The Ashatans, the Satans, have a kingdom. And of course, there's a hierarchy. And I can get all into that right now, but I'm going to just give you the basics. And the basics is simply this. There are 70 angels that the Most High Yahweh had set over the 70 nations at the destruction of the Tower of Babel. And that information is found in books outside of the Bible, books that were not allowed to be included in the Bible. But that's what went down. 70 angels were given rule over the 70 nations, but the Most High specifically said, there is one nation that shall be my own. It shall be my inheritance. You angels have no authority over this one nation. And that nation became, from the line of Abraham, the nation of Israel. And that the angel of the Lord, some people say it called Michael, the angel that stands for the people of Israel. But there's more to that too, because ultimately, the Most High stands. Yahweh himself stands for the people of Israel. But we won't get into that now because that gets very, very detailed and advanced, I would say. And most people are not ready to hear that one. But just understand that these angels were set over the 70 nations, and unfortunately, they were supposed to lead the 70 nations, but what they started realizing is that these humans started worshiping them as gods. And so I would say it went to their heads. But that's not the only powers. The kingdom of Ashatan is also made up of demons. And demons are the disembodied Nephilim from the earlier mentions of the giants, during the flood or just before the flood. And these giants were spawned by angels who procreated with human women, and they produced these, what they call giants, but the word in Hebrew is Nephilim. And of course, the flood came, and the flood was something sent by Yahweh to essentially wipe out that bloodline, because that bloodline was not his, meaning he didn't create it. And when he wiped them out, there was no place found for them. So, being that they are part angel, their disembodied spirits were forced to roam the earth. And then there's more to that story. And then there's some teachings that, hey, they're talking about the sons of Seth or the sons of Cain, and they're not talking about angels really procreate. Well, if you read the book of Jubilees, it tells you point blank, you know what I'm saying? Point blank that these Nephilim are the sons of angels. It doesn't say Seth or Cain or so. These are actually half-breeds. These are hybrids. So anyway, I don't want to belabor that point. So once you understand the kingdom of Ashatan, the Satans, plural, adversaries, are comprised of these 70 angels and the demonic children of the fallen watchers. And that's another story. We won't go into that either, but just so you have the backdrop here. So these princes or principalities are primarily these fallen angels, but it doesn't mean they can't also be very powerful Nephilim. So, demons. So I'm not going to throw that out. But we know here that the Prince of Persia withstood Michael the archangel. Now, you obviously know there's not a, human man that could withstand Michael the archangel. So this Prince of Persia is a spiritual being, an Elohim, if you will. Not an eternal, but a created Elohim. Or he's a very powerful demon. Very powerful. If it could, and I don't know that a demon could withstand Michael, but I'm up in the air on that one. How powerful a demon must this have been if it was a demon? I tend to lean towards it was just another angel of great power. But even that angel could not stop Michael, who was the captain of the host. Genesis chapter 10. And I want to go into this because this all ties into those spiritual concepts. Chapter 10, verse 1. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog. That's important. That's the one I'm going to focus on, Magog. That's a land. It's a tribe that lived in a certain land. And Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshech, and Tiras. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. And Rephath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, and Tarshish, and Kittim, and Dedanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. And so that's where you basically first see the term Gentiles. And that term Gentiles was only applied to the descendants of Japheth. Now today, it means something different. So I'm not sure how that happened, but I have an idea. But the Most High Yah knew that these nations would kind of go off on a tangent, and they were named Gentiles. And I believe anyone down the road who followed in that vein became also known as Gentiles. But notice the children of Ham were not called Gentiles. The children of Shem were not called Gentiles. Only the children of Japheth. And Japheth is the one that populated Europe and the northern lands. Ezekiel chapter 38. Now, the reason I'm focused on Magog is because Ezekiel's going to focus on Gog of Magog. And that's important. Notice we've been talking about principalities, demonic spirits, and angelic spirits, Elohim spirits, I would say. I prefer not to use the term angel because angel just means messenger, and messenger is just a job description. What these are created Elohim. That's what angels are. Created Elohim, mighty one. Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 1. And the word of the Lord, Yahweh, came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Many people say that, when you look at the actual geography, kind of brings you into the Russian steppes area. And I want to focus on this, a couple things. And there's big arguments. Some people say, oh, no, it's not really Russia. The people of Magog actually lived in the area, like in the Turkish area, and that's who's going to attack Israel in the last days, the Turks. I'm like, you people have lost your minds. I'm not saying that can't happen. What I am saying to you is, do you think, let's look at America. The people in America today, you would say, oh, they're European. Yeah, go back 600 years. You would say, oh, they're African Asiatic. You see, people left their original homelands and went all over the earth. So to say that the people living, look at Egypt, and that's a big, uproar right now, big brouhaha. The people who live in Egypt today actually think they are the people who built the pyramids. They are not the people who built the pyramids. And there are some very simple basic studies. We won't even go into the DNA aspect, but the people who live in Egypt now are not the people who lived in Egypt, ancient Egypt. I mean, prior, the first and mid kingdoms, they're not the same people. These are Arabic people that came into these areas as part of the Mohammedan expansion. Islam expanded, and the Arab types moved into those areas. Before that, they were the Hamitic types that lived there. And, you just have to know enough about history, and also DNA proves that out, although detractors of that will say, oh, no, we have this other thing over here that says something different. And I can get into that, but that's ridiculous. Even the statues, the fact that Napoleon blew the nose off of the Sphinx because it was too broad, the cheekbones were too. The Sphinx is a statue of what we call today a black person, right? Anyway, so the people who live there now are not the same people, and there'll be people who get upset, but what I'm not going to do is let some outsider define, for instance, who I am. You can want to hang on to whatever you want to hang on to, but there's truth and then there's a lie. So anyway, what I'm trying to get you to understand is people have migrated and moved all over the world. The people living in North Africa are not the people who lived there previously in the ancient times. And that goes for every place. Just like the people in America look totally different from the people who originally inhabited America. The original inhabitants were pushed out or absorbed. And we all know that story, And the same could be said about Europe in general. So when people want to know what, and it's funny because they asked AI the same question. Oh, what did the Greeks look like? And AI came back with a great answer. Well, there's no simple answer because they were a melting pot. They really were. And I'm going to do videos on that. I can't wait to get to that because we have to go back to the beginning. Until you go back to the beginning, I mean to Adam. If you don't go back to the beginning, you can't figure this thing out. And right now, there's so much garbage thrown in the mix. This water we're drinking is so polluted. It's not even water anymore. If you see what I'm saying. If you get my point, get my drift. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? We have to go back to the beginning to filter out all the mush, because there's a lot of mush out there. In fact, it's mostly mush. So I want you to understand, human beings have migrated all over the earth. I guarantee very few of the people who started in a certain place are still in that certain place. Maybe a few, but the bloodlines are all over the earth. So anyway, with that being said, we'll go back. Let's start with verse 4. And I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws. Talking about Gog and Magog. Gog is an entity. Magog is a land or a nation, if you will. Or let's see, when he says Gog of Magog, Gog is an entity that came out of Magog. That's his origins. That's why a lot of people think Gog is actually a Nephilim, because he had his beginnings in Magog. But like I say, I'm going to hold on to that part with two fingers. But we just know that Gog is not a human. I've heard people say, "Oh, Gog is the Antichrist." Well, you guys don't understand. You're a chessboard. You're a puppet show. These entities have been around since the flood, basically. And if they're what we call angels, they were around long before that. And humans come and go, and they're just running the same game on human beings as they've been, 3, 4, 5,000 years ago. So Gog, the chief prince, again, that word prince, that's what I'm trying to tell you. He's a prince and not a human prince. He's like the Prince of Persia or the Prince of Grecia. And notice there's no Prince of Rome. At least he's not called a Prince of Rome. And so I'm going to put to you that Gog is probably the actual Prince of Rome, along with the Prince of the Asia Minor kind of area, right? So he's not necessarily confined to a physical location. His seat is in a physical, or I should say, physical location. A lot of people think his seat is in Pergamum, and I'll save that for another video. But his origins are in that area, that Turkic region. But, and I'm going to go into this a little more, he's also described as coming from the north. Well, then there's that thing in Daniel about the king of the north. Is Gog also the king of the north, the spiritual force that gives power to certain nations to rule in that vicinity? And if you look at Rome, I guess you would say Rome was kind of was at a point the king of the north, but he also was the king of the south. So these are regional, how you would say, regional kingdoms that either one angelic being or spiritual being could rule over the north, but then he could go down and get control of the south too, as with the case of the Roman Empire. So that whole Mediterranean basin area, that crescent area, became the Roman Empire. And I would think that God probably was the entity that controlled that whole area and gave power to the Romans. But anyway, I'm going to hold on to that with two fingers, but just know Gog is a spiritual entity. Okay, let's continue. And I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws. Where have I heard that before? I want you to think this through. Book of Job, when he talks about Leviathan, that sea beast, that monster in the seas, right? Yah tells Job, were you the one that's going to put a hook in the jaw of Leviathan and play with him? See, we got that same terminology here, almost like Gog is Leviathan, or described as Leviathan, the beast that comes up out of the sea, essentially the sea dragon, if you will. So just things to think about, but the terminology is similar to that in Job and Leviathan. So you're getting the idea that Gog is this very bad entity that affects, on a whole, the European continent specifically, and gives his seat of power probably Pergamum. And you can read about Pergamum in the book of the Revelation of Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, right? But anyway, just know that he's an entity, a very powerful entity over that region. And Yah says, I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, Libya with them, all of them with shields and helmets. Yeah. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarma of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Now you can take this a couple ways. You see, you have Europe, what I like to tend to call the Roman Empire, but then it mentions Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, basically North Africa. So this is it's either Gog, and you have to think this through, because Daniel also talks about the king of the north, the king of the south. God could be both. He could be both the king of the north and the king of the south. His goal is to destroy humans, to destroy mankind. And he uses a certain vehicle to do it. He's using it today. Okay? He's using a people group to destroy the earth. He's using a people group to create war everywhere on earth. He's using a people group to gain control financially, spiritually. He's using this people group to get control of food and consolidate all your needs into the hands and powers of very few individuals at the very top. He's using governments. He's using the wealthy. He's making people wealthy and then enslaving them to use them to enslave you. So there's a lot going on here. And but when you look at it, it's almost like, and I've heard people compare him to the Antichrist. Well, that's problematic. Not necessarily. There's a lot of reasons to maybe believe that, except that the thing, when God comes against Israel, it's after the 1,000-year period. But yet, Gog has been around the whole time. So is he the one that influences the Antichrist? Is the Antichrist an offspring of Gog? I mean, there's a lot to think about here. So if you want to use Gog as being the Antichrist, that's just wrong. Now, you might say, yeah, he's the one that influences the Antichrist to do certain things, like create a one world order. But to call the Antichrist Gog, or Gog the Antichrist, yeah, I'm sure he's Antichrist. They all are, right? And we throw that term around. I'm going to do videos on terms of concealment, like terms we just throw around and hand a meaning to it when it's not even really, what it is. But anyway, Gog is more than a man. Now, he may give his power to a man. And we'll leave off on that because I don't want to belabor this too much. So Ezekiel chapter 38. Therefore, son of man, prophesy and say unto Gog, thus saith the Lord God, in that day when my people of Israel dwelleth safely, shall thou not know it? And thou shalt come from thy place out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company and a mighty army. Notice they come out of the north parts. They talk about what they call Lucifer. I can go into that a little more, but let's just say the devil, just to make it simple. He said, I will sit on the sides of the north and be like the Most High. They never say they're going to replace the Most High. They know they can't do that, but they want to be worshiped like the Most High. They want to be adored like the Most High. They want people bowing down to them like the Most High. I mean, they want to be like the Most High. They're not trying to replace him. They can't do it. They know it. There's no titanic struggle between good and evil. It's not real. That's that Zoroastrian nonsense that comes out of Babylon that most people today kind of, look at Hollywood movies. Yes, it's titanic struggle between God and the devil. No, it's not. And they know it. That's not something that ever issues out from their goal is to basically destroy men, is what it comes down to. They're not even thinking about destroying God. What they want to do is gain complete control of the situation. Okay, so let me see, where did I leave off? So God comes with his host against Israel. Okay, we'll leave off there. But you got to understand, and we'll show it in a minute, primarily Gog is talked about as a principality throughout the book, but he's talked about as coming against Israel in the days after the 1,000-year period. So he's influencing before the millennium up until Christ, and then he's influencing after the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ. And so you got to look at that too, is that, the devil is thrown into the pit, him and his cohorts, I would gather. Now, the beast and the false prophet, remember, after the 1,000 years, Satan is thrown into the lake of fire and incinerated along, it says, where the beast and false prophet are, right? So he's only thrown in jail over the millennial period. And I would guess, because of Gog being mentioned again after the 1,000-year period, is that Gog is thrown in prison with Daddy Satan's, right? Whoever, right? So they're imprisoned, but they're allowed to come back out after the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And it specifically mentions Gog will lead a revolt of the nations. Because through the millennium, the nations are bowing down. And the book of Zechariah is saying from year to year, they're coming up to Jerusalem to observe the Feast of Tabernacles, all nations. And any nation that does not come up shall get no rain and shall suffer the plagues. So during the millennial reign of Christ, everybody's on their best behavior. But then the dragon's released again, along with his cohorts, apparently Magog, and they go into perdition, and that becomes their final judgment. So I'm not going to belabor that. Let's continue. This is getting long. So I just want you to think about it. It's not a thing of God is a man and he's the Antichrist, like in the Hollywood movies. He's not. What was that movie? The Omen, Damien Omen. He's not that guy, whatever. He's a spiritual entity with great power. So this is part one of the series. I'm going to kind of end up at this point, we're in Ezekiel chapter 39 here. So in summary for this part, I want to bring back up the idea of the next part two. We're going to compare Gog with Agag, because Agag is a very important character throughout the scriptures, and I'm going to talk about him in part two. And what you're going to end up finding out is that the word Agag used in Numbers chapter 24 by Balaam the prophet, the man whose eyes are open, he says that this king of Israel be higher than Agag. Well, that seemed odd because Agag, he was a king of the Amalekites, but he was just a man. Why would I have to say that this king of Israel would be higher than Agag, or is Agag more than what we think? We're going to look into that in part two. So, tune in. I'm telling you, this is good stuff. And by the way, if you're picking up on what I'm putting down, if you're being edified, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to help move this algorithm. I'd appreciate it a whole bunch. And I'd like to keep this message coming to you. At least, if nothing else, it gets you to thinking a little bit. Do your own research. So here we go. Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 1. Therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against Gog and say, thus saith the Lord God, Yahweh Elohim. Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And I will turn thee back and leave but the sixth part of thee, and will cause thee to come up from the north, and will bring thee upon the mountains of Israel. And I will send a fire on Magog. See, the Most High is going to send a fire on Magog. And among them that dwell carelessly in the isles. And there's a reason. The minute they mention isles, I started thinking, I kind of know what isles means. Isles, look, that's where I get the idea that the Roman beast system, which is spread over the isles to this day, is kind of the West. But Magog is actually from kind of the northeastish. So that's why I don't say you can't lock Gog down to one tiny area. He's the one pushing this entire world system before the Messiah and after the 1,000-year reign. And they shall know that I am the Lord. So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel. He will make his holy name known. That's what my whole thing, if you want to call it my ministry, I hate using that because I don't view myself as, preacher, maybe more of a teacher, but what I'm pushing here is the name. And it seems like everybody's fighting against that name, which makes no sense whatsoever if you sit down and rationally think about it. So many people against the name of the Most High. Yahweh, right? Everybody wants to say everything but Yahweh. They want to say Adonai. They want to say Hashem. They want to say God. They want to say the Lord. They want to say everything but his holy name. But remember, he raised Pharaoh up to show his power so that his name would be declared throughout all the earth. Not known throughout all the earth, but literally declared, spoken. So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, for my people shall know my name. That's another scripture, right? His people will know his name. So you better think about that one. He said his people will know his name. So if you don't know his name and you're not calling on his name, you need to ask yourself, are you his people? And I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore. And the heathen shall know that I am the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. Literally, when you go into the Hebrew, he's actually he says, what he's saying is, and I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore. And the heathen, the Gentiles, shall know that I am Yahweh, which means I am that I am. You know, that's what he's kind of saying. The Holy One of Israel. He's saying his name, and that the Gentiles will finally know his name. Just like Pharaoh finally learned his name. Keep that in mind. Ezekiel 39:26. After that, they have borne their shame and all their trespasses whereby they have trespassed against me. When they dwelt safely in their land, speaking of Israel, and none made them afraid, when I have brought them again from the nations, from the people, and gathered them. So Messiah gathers them out of their enemies' lands, and am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations. He's going to sanctify them in the sight, meaning he's going to do what he did when he brought them out of Egypt. All these nations who were looking down on him, thinking they could take pot shots at them. He's personally going to put those nations in their place and bring them down. Yeah, for this reasons that he raised them up so he could show his power. And then he's going to show without a doubt who he's with, who his people are. Keep that in mind. Down nations. Ezekiel 39:28. Then shall they know that I am Yahweh their Elohim, the Lord their God, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen, the Gentiles. But I have gathered them unto their own land. He says, I have gathered them unto their own land, and have left none of them anymore there. Meaning amongst the heathen, their enemies. He's saying not one kernel will fall to the ground. He's going to bring every last Israelite back to the promised land, not just, Jewish people. He's going to bring Israel back to the promised land personally. Think that through. And so we'll end this off on Revelation 20. And when the 1,000 years were expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. See, there we go. Satan, the adversaries, shall be loosed out of his prison. I say his, but there's a prime adversary who is his kingdom. He runs all the other ones. I mean, it's a kingdom. He's got his advisors, his government, it's a whole government. You know what I'm saying? So adversary could be plural, it could be singular, but in general, it's a whole kingdom, not just an individual. And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. That's kind of like everybody, you know what I'm saying? That a one world order reforms apparently after the millennial reign of Christ. But Yah allows it. He says, yeah, I want this to go down. I'm going to let it go down. So Gog is back doing what he does. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about and the beloved city. And fire came down from Yah out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. So understand, there's a difference between the devil, the beast, and the false prophet. And so, I'm not going to get all into that now, but understand when the devil and his cohorts, remember we mentioned Gog and Magog making that comeback, so that includes them going with him. So it's not just one individual, it's a group being tossed into the lake of fire. Previous to that, they were only in jail, essentially. So I'm going to leave you on that note, and I'll say farewell to you, my friends and family. And remember, this is only part 1. So just keep in mind, I love you all so much, and thank you so much for continually supporting my content. If you did enjoy this video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share this with your friends and family. I'm sure they find it interesting as well. I'm very excited to continue this journey with you. I thank you all for bringing certain stories to my attention and for continually keeping me updated with certain events around the world. I very much appreciate you all. Shout out to the channel members. We're growing by leaps and bounds. And may everybody have a beautiful and blessed day who's in the body of Messiah, Yahusha HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ of Nazareth. And I will see you all on the next video. Shalom.